This is a personal view, and it's shared by Blue Skies. It's not an NDS view, but if you, and it would be good to get some other perspectives on this, but if you think about the effort that's gone into the campaign so far, and the fact that we've got bipartisan support, we've got everybody intellectually committing to, yes, this is a good idea, but there's not a lot of energy or momentum anywhere. And so, and you know, the focus of our campaign is on getting more people on the website, and it's on, you know, getting people along to their MPs and so on. What, I guess what I've started to think is that there's not enough tension anywhere. There's not enough reason for change, and that if you think, just in terms of election cycle, political cycles, you can see that there is some imperative to throw more money into the system, and it's fairly obvious where those would be with kids and with ageing carers and so on. But other than you know, I guess some push to contribute some money. So even if that was $1 billion, you know, they could contribute politically. You could contribute enough to make it look like you're serious, without actually doing the system transformation that we really need. Because when you think about it, and there have been some commentators who have raised this before, and I guess, so it's not really an original thought, but if you think the level of system change that we're talking about is messy, it's longer than probably politicians would like in terms of being useful for them. And so a likely scenario, not the only scenario, but a likely scenario is that they would commit some additional investment, but not necessarily commit to the actual system change that's needed. And that's not enough. It's not going to be good enough. And if we wait until November and see how the final report looks and how government chooses to respond to it, then it's going to be too late.
The feedback that I've received is, yes, as you're saying, it's a wonderful report, yes, this should happen, but there seems to be a real scepticism about the fact that it ever will happen because of the injection of funds. Is it politically beneficial? You know, yes, so we've got bipartisan support, but who's really going to bite the bullet? And I see sort of just that general scepticism of, yes, well, is it just another UBUG report of something that should be happening, but hey, is it ever going to happen?
I think we've taken the approach that what needs to be different this time is that people take responsibility. Like, we're past the point where we can wait for them to do it, whoever them is, and that we actually need to look at, you know, thinking about, you know, what do we want to create ourselves in a proactive sort of a way. Because, you know, at some level, if you think we're all responsible, every one of us is responsible for the system we've got. You know, every member, every Australian is responsible because we've put up with it. And we've got a bit of a chance here, a fairly significant chance to create something different, and we can either let it drift by, or we can actually sort of get a bit organised.
And I think the other key message we've got to have there is that any one of us could be in that system tomorrow. And that's when I've been out talking to general corporations. A lot of them have gone, you know, yeah, good idea, yeah, we should do it, but it, you know, it doesn't impact on me. I don't need to do anything because it's got nothing to do with me. And it's not until you drive home around where you could be crossing the road after this meeting and you could be in this system tomorrow. And then all of a sudden you can see them go, I better have a look at the website because no one thinks of that. I mean, the way we survive is to pretend it won't happen to us.
Now, just to create a bit of an image of what the future could look like, and this is from a Blue Skies sort of thinking perspective, is if you can imagine a conversation with half a dozen or a dozen people where you've got plaintiff lawyers, you know, the ex-fireman who fractured his spine, running along the beach chasing after his two little girls, and those two little girls now won't go near him because he's so grumpy and, you know, not in a good place. You know, if you've got, you know, someone from local government there, you know, you've got a couple of counsellors, you've got a couple of parents, you've got a couple of people with disability. A conversation there around what needs to be different. Like that's going to be, I think, where we really see some change driven. Those conversations where people actually hear each other's story and are blown away by that story and how real and close that is to them personally, and where their both personal and professional values and what they thought to be true is challenged. So in terms of and that's not a hard thing to start to pull together. You know, in Blue Skies we've done quite a bit of that, where you get a nice mix of people and a good question, and that's where the real shift starts to take place. And those people demand something different. And I guess the extra dimension that Blue Skies is wanting to add to it is that we do some scenario thinking over the next year or two. In that, in terms of moving forward, if you think there needs to be significant cultural change, there needs to be investment in people being ready, there needs to be some research and practice so that we really understand what works and how things need to be different. The intention would be to roll out a piece of work that Blue Skies drives, primarily because Blue Skies is nothing, it's just air. You know, it's not an organisation, it's not affiliated with anybody in particular. And if Blue Skies is driving that work, linked with others, and is driven by not just Blue Skies, but a reasonably heavyweight core team of people who design and make the decisions and do the final analysis. And by a heavyweight team, I'm suggesting people from Queensland Treasury, people from local government, activists, people clearly from both sides of government, and people of the social innovator type who can carry work of that scale and can do it with no other agenda but a long-term interest in people with disability having a decent life and in the inclusive community agenda. So you would start with a core team, and we've actually started to think about who would be in that. You would have then a broader team of stakeholders, maybe another 30 or 40 key people, probably only a third of them actually being from our sector. The rest would need to be from business, from education, from a whole range of different fields, but people who are influential in their own domain. I've spoken to state government about, and they're 100% supportive and happy to put in-kind support in there. Waiting to see if there's any funding behind that. It may or may not be a good idea to get state funding. I've also spoken to a number of corporates and philanthropic people, and there's also some strong possibilities there. Because in terms of social innovation, this is something that appeals to people. And with Blue Skies, we've got, Blue Skies is tiny, but it's strong enough, and it has been positioned strongly enough over the last 2 years that it's credible. And this sort of work really is a scaled up version with more technical input. I envisage some international oversight from a technical scenario planning perspective as well. Even though the scenario planning is really just the tool. So can people see any risk in going down that path?
Val, may I just like to make a comment, and I wholeheartedly support key stakeholder, and to me, the most key stakeholders are the people with disability themselves. Mm-hmm. It was just an observation when the 10-year planning that Disability Services or the government were doing, I attended Maryborough. There was a huge conference room filled with people, 3 people with a disability were there. I challenged my service managers and said, where are our people with a disability? Oh dear, you're right, we forgot. So my comment would be, whilst the plan is great, we must make sure that the key stakeholders are predominantly the people who have to live with the decisions that are made.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we have to we have to change the mentality of some service providers, and as a parent, I don't have the broad scope of experience that you people do, but my personal experience is that they are quite tunnelled vision, because especially in regional areas they don't have exposure to a lot of this sort of thing, and they still see their role very much in the old charitable thing, you know, of providing good care and we know what's best for you.
Yeah.
It's changing, and there are key people who see what has to change, but I suspect that there's still a lot of that old culture still
You should be
ingrained.
grateful.
And to get your key stakeholders there, discussing those questions requires the cooperation of those service providers. So I think, there has to be some work done at that level.
See, I would put to you that we all are guilty of that, and that it's that we all have much to lose, and we all have much, you know. There's certain fears that, and it doesn't matter which part of the sector, whether you're talking about people with disabilities, families, services, bureaucrats, we all have something to lose, and are going to have to let go of something in order for something amazing to emerge. And that the first thing we need to do is let go of the us and them. You know, we've got plenty of service providers that are family members and people. You know, it's just that I guess the separation is artificial and it's not helpful to us anymore.
The challenge that I see now from coming here today and having these conversations, which for me, like you just made the point, I think that is one thing that I really appreciate is this this driving of thinking differently, as you say, continually bringing out what other ideas are with this, how can this happen? Because for me, after having that conversation with you, I realised, so this NDIS is happening, so what are NDIS Blue Skies doing for this to happen? So it's that changing of perceptions to get people thinking, what am I going to do for this to happen? Yeah. Now that is about really making that connection with people, you know, to change that, because I know that we've thought at our organisation, well, we organised a teleconference and then we sent out information to people and we put it on our web. So now it's about going back and saying, well, actually no, because there's more that can, that we can be doing with this. So, because I think we do have a culture of going, oh, well, I've engaged this much, so I've done my bit.
Yeah, and we've, I think just listening to the two of you, what some services have done, have just sitting down and having a conversation with the families and the people with disability that you work with is a good start.
It's a good start.
And say, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for our future?
Yeah.
What do we need to do that we're not, and it's not necessary to say, I think you're doing it wrong. You just say, look, there's an opportunity here. What are we going to do together about it? And it might be, download some campaign type stuff off the website. I mean, that's easy and it doesn't cost anything. You might go down that path, or you might actually sit with your families and say, how do we need to reconfigure our service? We provide a service for 73 people. At the moment it looks like this. That's actually out of step with what the sort of thing that the Productivity Commission's talking about. How can we sort of rejig this? And we might as well start now. Because no matter what happens politically with an NDIS, we have gone too far to turn back. Like there is no going back. So we've got to do the change anyway. And we can either wait and do it go kicking and screaming into change, or we can say, well, writing's on the wall, we might as well get on with it. We have resources now. At the very least, there's a mood at the moment for renegotiating how you're using, not renegotiating, that's a bit strong, getting a little bit of flexibility, negotiating a bit of flexibility in how you're doing things, if you're on about transition to a more contemporary way of doing things. It does take a bit of practice to craft questions in a way that invites personal responsibility and not blame. The questions that we've used reasonably effectively have been, what would it take to create a disability service system that meets the needs of Queenslanders, which then morphed into what would it take to create an inclusive community, which was a much better question. But then you need to follow that up with what would we need to let go of in order for that to happen. And then what are we willing to do next, or what should we try next? This is very embryonic. It's not something we've talked about outside of this room. I've had some quiet conversations in government and with some philanthropy sort of, and with a university, just in terms of I guess there's a certain rigour around it, and it needs to be done in a very systematic way, and it needs to be captured. The story needs to be told of it right from the beginning. So we've sort of talked about organising something there, but otherwise it's very, very new as an idea. And so this is, I guess, the first chance to get a little input. But what it does, is it's not shifting focus away from the campaign at all. It's broadening out the focus and saying, we're not hanging everything on this, because this can become about politics, and we can't afford for it to, fade out because it didn't sort of get a run politically. So we need to keep pushing there, but start to broaden out and say, there is no turning back from here. We need more money, and we need, to create a decent system, because the one we've got now is broken. And be absolutely resolute in that.